Hello, hello. Welcome to the Digitizing Story Design Jam, where designing your life with identity in mind through music. We'll get right started with a few jams, and hopefully you're having a wonderful day. If not, hopefully this jazzes you a little bit. There is no pun intended. It's not jazz showing, but here we go. All right, all right. Just got to get us started a little bit with some music. I like music. Music connects people. I have not met a single person that does not like music. So I find that to be very helpful in connecting people in many ways. And so in today's conversation, really we're excited to think about how our identities matter and how do we think about our identities through music. But more specifically, how we can design our lives and really think about branding our own experiences. And so we're excited to have three wonderful humans who will share their stories, talk about music and its impact in their journey, and then also help us think about digitizing our brand with our identities in mind. So with us, we have Kwame Phillips, who is a founder of Grooming the Next LLC, and also our very own assistant director at Johns Hopkins for Multicultural Affairs Programming. And we also have Kristofer Madu, who is going to help us facilitate this conversation, who is an artist himself, a founder of SameTunes LLC, as well as First Fridays Group, 1FG, and also a member of the class of 2021 and 2022. So really excited to have Chris with us today. And then finally, we have with us a wonderful human as well, Miss Maryland and top 5 of Miss America contestant, as well as our current assistant vice president for marketing and brand for University Communications, Marina Cooper. And so to introduce Marina Cooper to you all, we're going to show a little clip here or there to kind of start the conversation, and we're excited to do so. So in a few seconds, you will see more information about Marina.
Now about Miss Maryland, Marina Harrison.
Half of my senior year of high school I missed because I was on the Board of Education. I was appointed as the Anne Arundel County student board member, and I was the only student member on a Board of Education in the United States to have full voting rights. One of the most controversial issues was when a parent wanted Maya Angelou's book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, completely out of our entire curriculum in the county. And our board actually ultimately decided that we would keep the book in our curriculum and keep it in our school libraries. My special item is my brass apple, which was given to me after my one-year term, and it reminds me of that privilege that I had to actually make a difference in the lives of my peers and also make a difference in the lives of teachers and adults.
And now singing the contemporary R&B hit Fallen, Marina Harrison, Miss Maryland.
I keep on falling. Here we go. With you, sometimes I love you, sometimes you make me blue, sometimes I feel good, at times I feel used. Loving you, darling, makes me so confused. I
Oh, no better way to introduce yourself than to show everyone your high school braces and glasses and all that time you were on the Board of Education, but also hit some nervous notes on national television. Thank you, Clifton.
Well, thank you for being with us today. I enjoyed seeing and hearing your story a little bit. And so I'm going to let Chris take it away and ask some questions and just have conversation. Chris and Kwame, whatever your initial thoughts were of, what Marina shared in her story, or even, if you want to talk about why you chose that song for that contest or that experience. And that's all. I'll leave it to you all.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was awesome. And I think what always intrigues me is how people's values and passions can change over time. And I imagine, like Clifton said, you've never really met somebody that doesn't love music. I'm sure you still love music today. So one thing I'd be curious to hear is, how has the value or importance of music to you and to your identity changed between, what we just saw in the video and now?
Thank you. That's a great question. I went about choosing that song in that moment. And I should say that was Miss America 2004. So the year was 2003. I had just graduated from college myself. And I chose that because I wanted a contemporary song. I wanted something that I actually listened to and something that my peers listened to. And that was kind of unheard of at that time. A lot of folks were singing musical theater type things, which I identified with. But I felt like it was important to connect with the audience on who I was in every phase of the competition, so to speak. I wasn't a pageant girl. I want to set the record straight on that. I entered Miss America in order to pay for college, and it did. I graduated college debt-free because of the Miss America program, and I only competed. Hey man, raise your hand for that. I only competed for 18 months in the program. So, going through that process of figuring out what is this program all about? How will I showcase who I am and my strengths of this program? I had to make some choices. I actually have more dance training than I do singing training. So I've always been connected to music, but I felt like singing was my real connection of who I am and my way of conveying my identity to the audience. So while I may choose a different song today, I still love that song. And obviously it has a very special place in my heart. And I may choose different hairstyles. Not all of that hair was mine, but all of this is. But the common thread there is the music, right? And the connection to it. And you saw that, I didn't hit every note, and that was okay, I guess. But I was really into it. I really wanted to have fun in that moment. And the way I psyched myself up for those moments where you only get one chance to make an impression, like being on national television in front of millions of people, and more than 10,000 people, I think it was, in Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, was to psych myself up and say, I'm gonna have fun in this moment. I'm gonna own this moment. And no matter what, no one can take the joy and the exhilaration I felt in that time. And so I see that in my, 22-year-old self on screen. And, even though, I might change my hairstyle today, I'm grateful for that.
No, that's awesome to hear. And it sounds like, a lot of things might have changed. Like you mentioned, your hairstyle, the song that you would pick today, and, who you are as a person today. And one thing you mentioned that I think is interesting, and it's going to be a question for both of you guys. So in your case, Marina, you mentioned you would pick a different song today. What song would that be? And Kwame, right? If you were to sing in front of 10,000 people a song that you think, defines who you are today, what song would that be?
I guess I'll go first. There are a lot of songs that I love. One of the artists that I'm really getting into now a little bit more because I want to learn guitar is her, H-E-R, as some people call her, and I really connect with her music. Changes. There's so many great things that I connect to in that. I'm very if I became a recording artist, let's just put that out there. I love Dua Lipa. I love music that really just gets you going and moving. I love that. But in honesty, I still love Alicia Keys. Alicia Keys, John Legend, and Lionel Richie are like my trifecta of like, and I love them. And so I probably would pick, if I wanted to perform something like This Girl Is on Fire, or something in that genre, because that's kind of where I am right now. Yeah.
It's a great answer. And how about you, Kwame?
Actually, I'm trying to think, because there's a lot of artists that I would choose. But growing up, I grew up singing in the choir. I grew up in the South, Georgia, and in the South and in Georgia, when you could talk and you went to church, they put you in the choir, and you were forced to sing. You were forced to do speeches and really stand in front of the congregation, large or small, and deliver, whatever they wanted you to sing. And so I would sing a bunch of gospel songs. But growing up, one of my favorite gospel Christian artists group was the Clark Sisters, and they recently produced a film that released on Lifetime. And I love the Clark Sisters because they're one of the first gospel artists to take secular music and combine it with inspirational and also gospel with a gospel message. And so I just really love that, and the sound, the blend, all of that. So if you go on my phone or Instagram, if you go into the save section, there's a bunch of videos of me just like listening to the Clark Sisters sound. But more presently, artists that I really love to listen to is Jonathan McReynolds. He's also a Christian artist. PJ Morton, oh my God, phenomenal. If you're looking for like a love songs, songs where you're courting or dating, those songs are beautiful. And then songs like For Pickup, he has that as well. And I also love John Legend. That's my go-to karaoke songs, because I feel like I can, pull that out with the rasp. So yeah.
Nice. So I guess I can also answer for myself. There's one experiment that, in psychology science that I think is very interesting, which is Pavlov's dog. And it essentially talks about how animals can condition themselves to respond to certain stimuli in a certain way, right? So, researchers have found that you can do the same thing to yourself with music. So there's a certain song that you'll play and it reminds you of your ex. There's a certain song that you play and it makes you feel a certain emotion. So I have two songs that ever since I was young, I always listen to before big exams, right? I listened to these two songs before I took the SAT that got me into Johns Hopkins. I listened to these songs before any big moment, like an investor meeting. So for me, that's Champion by Kanye West and I Wonder by Kanye West, because they evoke this feeling of, the desire and hunger for success that you can find within yourself. And so I really never listened to those songs casually, which is why when I listen to those songs, it encourages me to go above and beyond. So I think there's like how would you say, a common thread tying us together, which is that songs evoke a certain emotional response within us, which I think is why, music is super powerful. And, another question that I would really like to dive into is like, for you guys, on a day-to-day, in what ways do you use music? Is it something that you listen to casually at every moment? That's how it is for me. Or is it something that you use for a specific purpose in your day-to-day life?
I guess I'll go first. I use music to uplift my spirits. I've tried to listen to music, for example, as background noise when I work, but I connect with it so much. I can't, especially if there are lyrics involved. It's impossible for me to do that because my mind connects and goes directly to the music itself. So for me, hearing you talk about, it's the way that you kind of get amped up and get your game. going and thinking about your next big event in your life. I totally identify with that. Yeah, and growing up in a family of four where, you know, everybody was busy and doing activities, music has also kind of been my companion, right? Because I'm used to, I was born into a family, so I'm used to activity and things around me all the time. And so when I find those few moments where I'm actually isolated or by myself, I actually often use music to keep me company.
Nice. How about you, Kwame?
For me, I think with music, I think I use it in a functional way in a sense. Like for the day, like it's gloomy, it's kind of cold. You know, I like to pull some music like Erica Badu or India Reed, the more soulful, like I'm trying to think type of movie. If it's sunny, I want a little pop mixed with a little R&B, a little bit of upbeat, windows down, you know, ceiling, you know, missing. And so, so with me, I love different music for how I'm feeling, the mood, the setting of the day. But often when I wake up in the morning, I'm listening to inspirational music, music that, you know, picks you up, music that really encourages you. I really love to put on music for such a time as like we're living in today with so much going on. I try to make sure what I'm putting into my ears is uplifting, is encouraging, is empowering. And as of late, I've also been listening to a lot of music from the 60s. Like I've been really watching a bunch of YouTube videos on the Motown era. A lot of music from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, because that struggle back then is what we're currently in. It just kind of puts me in that moment, in that vibe, and in that space. So I've been really like into that music really a lot lately. So yeah.
That's a great answer. You know, and so another question that comes to mind, and I can also start by answering myself. I think that I would love like a super real, raw answer for this. And so I guess I can just talk, give you some time to think. The question is, in what ways do you feel like the music that you listen to reflects aspects of your identity? And it can be your strengths, but it could also be your vices, right? And so in my case, I love house music. And I come from a background where a lot of my life I've loved hip hop. You know, hip hop culture has been a huge part of me. And I think that you know, when I listen to music with a lot of vocals in it, you know, sometimes it can inject ideas into your head that are not your own. And you can start to embody, you know, those lifestyles, those ideas, you know, aspire to live certain lifestyles and embrace certain ideas. And at the end of the day, like, the artists that you listen to aren't always a reflection of who you are. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, right? And what I've seen in my development, you know, with music and my identity, the more the more that I have started to find myself, the more that I have started to use music less as like, how would you say, less as something to listen to, but more as something to actually, like an open book, a journal to which I can, you know, put my thoughts and my identities into. And what I mean, like on a day to day, now I listen to house music. House music either has a one repetitive vocal or not a lot of vocals. And I use music as a tool to help me reconnect with myself because I spend a lot of time working on ideas, working on trying to build something, create something that I think will impact others. So for me, house music is something where I listen to it and I'm able to just completely clear my mind and figure out like what's going on in here. So with that said, you know, I think that in my personal case, my journey with music has reflected a evolution in my identity, going from looking to find who I am outside of myself to now figuring out who I am by searching inside of myself. And so I'd love to hear in your cases, how would you say that the music that you listen to or the music that you love has reflected, you know, who you actually are, Marina, who you actually are, Kwame? Yeah, it's a tough one.
I'll go, Kwame. I'll go. Let me go first. Um, you know, you're actually making me reflect on my choices, Kristofer, which I really appreciate and love about this conversation because, you know, while I love upbeat music and obviously my music choices actually change. I have two kids, right? And so they listen to music with me in the car, and I'm really conscious about the type of music we listen to there. When I'm alone and I have my choice, I find myself gravitating back to R&B artists. I love 90s R&B. We talked, Kwame talked a little bit about kind of what he identified with in his childhood. The 90s were a great time for me. And there's a lot of great music in 90s R&B that I connect with. And so I've actually begun, as my kids are like 9 and 11 now, introducing it to them. And they kind of know that Alexa needs to play that station when mommy's outside on the patio having a glass of wine or something. And you know, and that's how I use it. I use it to just remember to reflect on good times. And I know that music that I'm listening to now with my kids, that, you know, the top 40 music that we listen to on the radio, there'll be moments where I'll want to listen back on these times and remember them growing up. So yeah, I use it for a lot for reflection. And similar to you, Kristofer, when I'm listening to it, I'm not thinking about work. You know, I'm really only thinking about that moment, and often the lyrics and connecting to that in that way.
How about you, Kwame?
For me, just kind of starting back with my childhood, when I think about music and how I found my identity through music, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the South in Georgia, and I grew up in a conservative household where music, we wasn't quite liberal in the sense, and so we were. My mother was very strict on what we listened to, and so all we listened to was gospel Christian music, and it wasn't till till I kind of got into high school, I started hearing more R&B and more hip hop and rap. And even still at that time, it felt kind of strange and out of place for my identity. And so a lot of the music we listened to, up until, I kind of got in high school and went off to college was, upbeat Pentecostal holiness music. And it was very conservative and almost in a sense, it wasn't open to really what the world would offer me as I began to explore college and begin to explore, things that I may have not experienced in a small town in Georgia in a conservative home. But I appreciate that because a lot of that music has grounded me in a sense. But now looking at my identity and who I am now, I prefer slower music. I prefer music that make me think critically. I prefer music that would allow me to walk in a place of healing, places where music that allow me to explore other cultures and identities. And so it's not just, the upbeat Pentecostal, but it's also the music that is of PJ Morton, the John Legends, and the Erykah Badu's and the Jill Scotts and the PJ Morton. So it makes you, and the Tasha Cobbs and the Jonathan McReynolds. So that those type of music is what really fits my identity now, as someone who's in faith, as someone who is exploring love, as someone who comes from conservative but more now liberal thought processes of living. So
that's awesome. No, I appreciate both of you also giving, vulnerable, raw, and real answers. I kind of want to transition and progress into the next part. We've been talking a lot about, music and how what we consume reflects our identity. And I think the next logical transition is like, so how does what we put out into the world also reflect our identity? And so I think one of the best contemporary examples of just putting stuff out into the world is, our social media. And so, Kwame, I know you're a social media king. So I guess we can totally start with you. Yeah, you're not letting Marina start this time. I would love to hear in your words, how would you say that the way you use social media, and how would you advise others to think about social media as they start to brand themselves and think about how they communicate their identity into the world?
That's funny. Thank you for that compliment, social media king. I don't know if I'm that yet, but I think with social media, when you're posting things or 30 seconds or a minute, or how many characters is it for Twitter? 140 characters. And so it really doesn't give you a snapshot, a real in-depth insight of who you are as a person and what your brand is. And so anything that I put out, I want to make sure it's representative of my values, my life mission, my life goals. And also think about me as a person, but also think about who I am reaching, who's connecting. If it's at times, well, in certain platforms like Facebook, I have family, I have friends, church community or spiritual community. Sometimes students who become friends, after they graduate, or sometimes it's colleagues. So I'm thinking about my audience and what they may need and what they may want to see. What part of my story or my identity can uplift or encourage or empower or motivate them to say, oh, I see this piece of his story. Now let me use what I see to kind of begin to ignite myself to the next point, next place in life. And so that's kind of how I utilize my platform, social media, to show my authentic, true self in the short amount of time that I do have, and then recognize who my audience is, and based on who my audience is, provide the content that they can resonate with and connect with.
Makes a lot of sense. And how about in your case, Marina?
Yeah, I think of it the same way. I'm very intentional on social media as well. Obviously, in a role where I've always done marketing or communications of some sort, I feel a responsibility to at least demonstrate best practices, at least around conduct on social media, which is really important. So I think about myself in terms of the content that I put out there. For me, it's mostly family stuff. I don't put much professional stuff out there, and I very much think about segmenting my audiences, just as Kwame said, based on the platform. So, folks who are on Facebook, friends with me are usually legitimate friends and not colleagues. And, I keep the colleagues on LinkedIn. Twitter, I see as more of a professional place for myself, where I do allow some kind of personal things that I would talk about in office chatter to kind of surface there. But then I also think about, my environment and the other folks in my family. So I think about my kids and what they would actually want me to put out there if I'm taking pictures of them or talking about them, because one day they'll grow up and they'll care a lot about what I've put out there. And I try to also model the same things that I'll be expecting of them when they take on their own social media presence. But my content mostly, I would say, is focused on family, my personal interests, obviously national conversations I want to join. The last post I did was about making sure I mailed my ballot off and got my flu shot, the two most important things I think we could do in fall 2020.
Awesome. Yeah, in my case, I don't know if you guys have seen the trend kind of that's been going around, how it started versus how it's going or how it ended, yeah, it's how it started, how it ended, or where it is now. And for me, it's those two. That trend makes success and traction look like it's a binary thing. It's here we are, this is where we were, but it doesn't show all the stuff you had to get through in between. So with my social media, I show the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anybody that follows me, they see the nights and the days when I woke up at 7 a.m. and I'm up till 8 a.m. the next day grinding. They see, oh yeah, working 11 hours straight. Anybody that knows me knows. So when they see, success or they see something happen, nobody's surprised or nobody says oh, how did that happen? And if they do, so what, because internally I know that I build my brand not around, not around success, not around handouts, but around the traction, that the work that I was putting in to achieve these things, And so with that said, maybe I kind of butchered the explanation, but I think my main point is like, for anybody that ends up coming across this message, everybody had a path that they had to take to get to wherever they are now. And for, I guess, 9 out of 10 people, it's not pretty. So no matter what situation you're in, just know that tomorrow, whatever door closes, you could be like one step away from the elevator with your name on it. And so I guess we can kind of transition into the next.
Actually, I want to make a point on that, Kristofer.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. That's a really important message for folks, because we often talk about how social media is a highlight reel, right? And what you're talking about is being authentic and showing all sides of the journey. And one of the most, I think, important things I've ever done on social media was share my daughter's cancer journey when she was 4 years old. And you can search it through hashtag Olivia's Awesome Future, but that was the good, bad, and ugly of a cancer journey of a family going through stage 4 pediatric cancer, with our child. And that's when I shaved my head. That's when we all shaved our heads, and we connected with so many people, obviously within our network, but outside of our usual network on social media, because I think we were being real and honest about what we were going through, and there were other families that identified with it. So I think what you're saying is so important, and thank you for highlighting it and bringing it up. And we all have to really work hard, I think, to remember that.
Yeah, I really like that. And thank you for sharing such like just a raw truth, that's something from your personal life. And I'm glad that, we have so much in this meeting that people, I think, will be able to resonate with, especially for people who have gone through, similar things in their past. And so with that said, I would kind of like to also transition into, the next part of the talk, and what might be kind of one of the final parts of this discussion is, how would you advise people to design their story as they think about not just where they are, but where they're coming from and where they want to go, who they want to be, and how they communicate that, or how they should communicate that, either internally or to the world around them. So I guess I've kind of explained a little bit of mine, which is not just showing, the end or the outcome, but also the journey there. But I'd love to hear what advice you would give to others on designing your story. Don't know who should go first, but I'll.
I will take this one since I thought about it. I think 3 or 4 years ago, when I was in Georgia, I was working at Georgia Southern University, my alma mater, began my professional career. Throughout my college days and leading up to the professional development moment, or working for the institution, I had kind of created and designed my story, and it was centered around empowering students of color, marginalized students, or marginalized identities, and not realizing that, and I would do the 9 to 5, but I would, stay behind and work almost to 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, not 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 to 10 o'clock at night, to connect with students and to have conversations with students and hang out with students and go to the dining halls with students and just be a mentor, a big brother. And not realizing I was designing this story or designing a future platform that I wanted to see. Like, I was thinking, like, if I was to transition and move from this institution, how can I connect and resonate with students and still have impact, even though I'm not physically present with them? And so this idea came to my mind, Grooming the Next, because at that time, I was supporting and really developing students to become leaders, and to become the next big thing in whatever field that they had chose or selected for their career path. But at that time, I got a job offer at Johns Hopkins, and I ended transitioning to Hopkins. But what it did was I had bright futures at Hopkins, but I also left a group of men and women who were desperately needing, support and really that developmental father figure, mentor, present. And so, but I was so afraid to actually utilize these platforms and social media, Facebook, Instagram, website, YouTube, and now the new features such as IG Live, Facebook Live, because I was like, well, with this, if I go live, I have to show a perfect side. I have to show this perfect image. I can't mess up, can't make mistakes. I don't want to end up going viral for doing something or saying something crazy or left. But I knew that this purpose of creating this Groom the Next platform or designing this story or designing this platform needed to happen. So it wasn't until this year, this idea was given to me back in 2016. I was 2020. I've now been able to create and design this platform on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and now I have my own website. And so it took 4 years to convince myself that I needed to show my real authentic self in the process of making this, the mistakes, the errors, and also the success. And so I've seen success from this design and this platform as a result of taking this step of faith and pushing back fear and allowing my story, my experience to connect with students who I no longer am physically able to be present with, but now also reaching a greater audience in using this platform. I know there was a lot, but I try to make sure it could, make sense in totality in terms of designing what my purpose is by utilizing social media platforms.
Makes a lot of sense. And how about in your case, Marina?
Yeah, I would say that it's really important for anyone who's considering to, about how they want to share their identity on social media is to consider the medium and to consider the channel first and what you really closely identify with, like what area, where are you most comfortable? Is it creating a Spotify list? And then think about the vehicles in which you're pushing that out, or is it highly visual and is it Instagram, or do you have something to say and you want to continue or pursue a career in television? So maybe you should be on YouTube. I would say that be really thoughtful about the platform that really resonates with you first and foremost, that you feel most comfortable, because then you're going to give your best to your audience, who you ultimately want to connect with. You want it to resonate with them as well. For me, I feel most comfortable in Instagram because I don't have to come up with the perfect caption. I can just capture the moment. And I do a lot of journaling and visual journaling as well. So even if I don't get a chance to write down my thoughts of the day or reflect on how my day was, I can take a picture of it, and that takes me back, and then I remember to go back and reflect on that, whether that's personally or within Instagram itself. So, for me, I'm all about like the moments and the memories and pulling all of those together. So, so that's the advice I would give around social media identity and how you go about kind of sharing who you are with the world.
No, that's awesome. I think that this has been informative, specifically through the lens of how, beyond just music, how our identities, emerge both internally, the way that we think inside our heads, and externally, the way that we show up in spaces and show up in the world. And I think that's great advice, specifically from both of you, on how others can build and design their stories. So with that said, I'd love to turn it back over to Clifton for the debrief and jam out.
Awesome. Well, I'm in awe with what you all have shared. I really think that it's been good to learn a little bit about you all's story. I think that, like Kristofer said earlier, that many people can hear your stories and your experiences and learn from them. And I think the next thing is that I would like folks to remember to use your resources. So you learned a lot about accessing opportunities, right? And being able to engage in your own journey, right? And so think about what that means for you. and use all the people that you see today, that you see in your experiences as resources to help you build your journey forward. And so definitely feel free to connect with us on social media. We definitely, obviously we all engage, and we talked about how we engage. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and definitely connect with me there, or just email me at cliftonshambry@jhu.edu. But also, we have another session in 2 weeks talking about connections, and so the power of connection. So it's going to be a mentor meetup for our first generation and limited income college students, as well as our underrepresented minority students, to connect with students and alumni. So we're excited about that opportunity. And until then, I would love for you all to jam out with us as we continue this journey together. As it loads. Come on with me.
Coming back around, back inside the room. Tell me how long we have been out. Body's twisted round, got me turned into the sound. Can you tell me how long we have been out? Coming back around, back inside the room. Tell me how long we have been out. My body's twisted round, got me turned into the sound. Can you tell me how long we have been